So now let us look at some questions on this chapter. So first let us look at most important type in this chapter, which is finding domain and range questions. So let us start with very easy functions. So first question, find the domain and range of f of x is equal to minus of mod x. So it's a very simple question because we know the nature of mod x. So here y is equal to minus of mod x. So we know that the domain of mod x is all real numbers. That is, any real number can go inside mod x, right? So the domain of this function is also equal to real numbers, because any number, for any number I can calculate mod, and for any number I can calculate a negative of that number. There is no problem with any number for this function. Next, what is the range of this function? So we know that the range of mod x is closed 0 to infinity. You get only positive numbers out of mod x, and if you add a minus to all these numbers, you get the range as minus infinity to 0. You get only negative numbers out of this function. So the domain is all real numbers, the range is open minus infinity to close 0. Next, let us go to the function root of 9 minus x square. So my function is y is equal to root of 9 minus x square. So for this function to be defined, let us go to the domain. How can we analyze the domain of this function? So for this function to be defined, the number which is inside square root has to be positive, right? So the condition is 9 minus x square should be greater than or equal to 0. So for this function to be defined, 9 minus x square should be greater than or equal to 0. This implies x square is less than or equal to 9, and this implies if x square is less than or equal to a square, x belongs to minus 3 comma plus 3. So x has to belong to minus 3 comma plus 3 is the answer. It is, the domain is minus 3 to plus 3, or I can write it as x is lying between minus 3 to plus 3. Now, what is the range of this function? So to calculate the range, you need to look at what the values of root of 9 minus x square is. So if x belongs to minus 3 to 3, we know that x square belongs to 0 to 9, right? X square is in between 0 and 9. So where does 9 minus x square lie? So if x square is some number between 0 to 9, 9 minus x square is also some number between 0 to 9. Because if x is equal to 0, if x square is equal to 0, you get 9. If x square is equal to 9, you get 0. So 9 minus x square is a number which lies between 0 and 9. So this implies root of 9 minus x square lies between 0 and 3. Because we know that this is a symbol for positive square root. You cannot get negative numbers out of this. So root of 9 minus x square always lies between 0 and 3. Root of 9 minus x square is nothing but the value of y. So value of y lies between 0 and 3. Hence the range is nothing but closed 0 to 3. So the domain is minus 3 to 3 and the range is 0 to 3. So in this question, you're asked to find the domain of the function f of x is equal to x square plus 2x plus 1 by x square minus 8x plus 12. So this is an example of a rational function, right? Because you have a polynomial by polynomial. So this is a rational function, and we know that rational function will be defined as long as the denominator is not equal to 0. So if the denominator is equal to 0, then this function will have a problem. So let us see where the denominator is equal to 0, and we'll remove these numbers from the real number set. That will be the domain. So x square minus 8x plus 12, if it is equal to 0, this is nothing but x minus 2 times x minus 6 is equal to 0. This implies x is equal to 2 or 6. X is equal to 2 or 6. That is, when x is equal to 2 or 6, the denominator becomes 0 and this function will not be defined. Apart from these two values, at all other values the function is defined. Hence the domain of this function is all real numbers except 2, 6. So in the next question, you're given that f of x is equal to root of 2 minus 2x minus x square, and you're asked to find the domain again. So in this you have a square root function and a polynomial function. A polynomial function is defined everywhere, and the square root function will be defined if the number inside square root is not negative. That is, for this function to be defined, 2 minus 2x minus x square has to be greater than or equal to 0. This is a quadratic inequality. So what we do is we first make the leading coefficient as positive. That is, you multiply the whole inequality, you multiply both sides with minus 1. So you get x square plus 2x minus 2 is less than or equal to 0. So x square plus 2x minus 2 less than or equal to 0. So it's a quadratic inequality. Quadratic inequality is less than or equal to 0 implies x lies between the roots. So x lies between the roots of this quadratic equation. So what are the roots of this quadratic equation? Can you factorize this? So I think it is difficult to factorize this. So I'll use the quadratic formula. The roots are minus 2 plus or minus root of b square is 4 minus 4ac is plus 8 by 2. That is equal to minus 2 plus or minus 2 root 3 by 2. That is minus 1 plus or minus root 3. So the roots of this equation are minus 1 plus or minus root 3. Hence, if this is less than or equal to 0, then x has to belong to minus 1 minus root 3 to minus 1 plus root 3. So this is the domain of this function. So in this question, you're given function f of x is equal to x square plus 2, and you're asked to find the range of this function. So the meaning of range is what will be the values of x square plus 2. If you put x as different values for this function, what are the outputs that you get? That is, if you have a machine, so that takes in values of x and it calculates x square plus 2 and it gives the value outside. So what are the values that comes out of this machine? So this can be analyzed systematically. So x square, the range of x square, we know that it is from 0 to infinity, because it's a square function. The range of square function is close 0 to infinity. So x square plus 2 lies between 2, infinity, right? That means the value of f of x or y lies between 2 and infinity. The range is nothing but the values of y. So the range of this function is close to, infinity. That's the answer. And let's go to the next question. F of x is equal to sine of pi times integer part of x square plus 1 by x power 4 plus 1. What is the range of this function? So here you have a rational function, a trigonometric function, and an integer part function, and a quadratic function also. So there is a mixture of 4 different types of functions. These trigonometric functions will be dealt with in the chapter trigonometry. But what you need to know is the sign of integral multiples of pi will always be equal to 0. So now, if as x changes, what is the domain of this function? The domain of this function is all real numbers, because sine is defined for all real numbers, integer part is defined for all real numbers, and x power 4 plus 1 is defined for all real numbers, and x power 4 plus 1 is never equal to 0. The rational function might have a problem if the denominator is 0, but x power 4 is positive plus 1. This will never be equal to 0. Hence the domain is all real numbers. So to find the range, whatever real number you put in the place of x, integer part of x square plus 1 is always an integer, right? Because the range of integer part is an integer. So this part will always be an integer. So integer times pi, sine of integer times pi will always give you 0 as the answer. So whatever number that goes in, the range is always a singleton set 0. That's the answer to this question. Thank you.